Welcome to Candid Talks about Sex for Saints, where we get candid about love, sex, wellness, and relationships. Just so you know, I am Tammy, a wife, a mother, best-selling author, your favorite intimacy and relationship coach, the host of this fantabulous podcast, where we gonna promote sex but still keep it God. And I got a question for you. Have you ever wished that someone had taught you more about sex from a faith-filled perspective? Or have you ever had questions no one answered? Or felt like if you knew then what you know now, you would have made decisions a little different? Let me tell you, you are not alone. This podcast is dedicated to just that. We're going to fill in the gaps, break some silence, and help you grow in godly intimacy without shame. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about when love gets toxic. What do you do when love gets toxic? Our guest, Miss CJ, is breaking it all the way down. She's going to talk about how toxicity often starts in childhood, how to recognize red flags, and the tools you need not just to get out of toxic love, but to stay out and heal for good. Miss Cecil is a mother, an author, a licensed clinical mental health counselor in her home state of North Carolina, as well as a licensed professional counselor in the state of Virginia. She is the founder of CJBoyd Christian Counseling Services, where the mission is to show clients how their faith and actions can help them reach their wellness goal. She is a firm believer that your relationship with God and therapy can change your whole life, and she has more than 24 years of experience. Let's welcome Miss CJ to the show. All right, y'all, let's get into it. Hello. I am super excited to have Miss CJBoyd here to the show today. I get so excited when I have opportunities to help individuals, journey through their process of being sexually saved. And one of those things that I have learned through this entire process is how many women, how many people, and I say women just because my audience is pretty much a lot of women. But I say women because so many of them get stuck in these toxic relationships. They get stuck in abusive relationships. And I am super excited to have, Miss CJBoyd here today so that she can discuss some of the things that can help you get unstuck, that can help you recognize, when love gets toxic, how to, get out of these relationships. So before we get into it, I just want to say welcome again, Miss CJ.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited about this conversation as well. So thank you again for inviting me.
I am excited to have you. I'm excited to have you. Before we get into it, just tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so as Tammy said, I am Cecil J. Boyd, or you can call me CJ. So owner, principal therapist at CJ Boyd Christian Counseling Services. Um, Wife, oh no, I will be.
You will speak.
I was speaking that, right? I'm a mother and over 24 years of experience in mental health, various exposure to crisis settings, working in the school, working in prison mental health. So definitely a lot of things working with women who are survivors of domestic violence and toxic relationships.
Yeah.
So a wealth of experience in behavioral health, and mental health. And so yeah,
Yeah.
lots of knowledge.
I love that. I chose this topic today because I speak to so many women who are always stuck in these relationships, and I often wonder why can't they just leave, right? And then I remember, a few of the relationships that I was in my past. There was this one person in particular where I didn't even realize that it was a toxic situation. I
Mm.
didn't realize that it was abuse that was happening. I just knew that this relationship was tearing me down. And I would have friends, I would have family. They would all be like, no, Tammy, like, you need to leave this person. And for whatever reason, I could not bring myself to that. And so I recognized that, it wasn't until one day where I think I went to a function and they had like different vendors there and they had like some pamphlets and it was like, how do you recognize whether or not you're in abuse? And everything that was on that list basically checked off except for the physical part, because in my mind I was thinking that the only way that it's abuse as if he is putting his hands on me, right?
Mm,
And so
mm,
when I read that list and everything checked off except for that, I was like, I really think that I am in one, right? And it took
mhm.
time for me to like come to terms with that process. And so I think I kind of want to start there. Like, what would we classify as abuse?
That's a good question. And uh, so often we're in environments where things are just they seem normal,
Yeah.
right? We grow up in households sometimes where there are loud voices and there are insults, right? And some people, that's just how it's just like that's how we talk to each other, but can be very abusive and very toxic, right?
Yeah.
So when I think about the relationship between an abuser and a victim, it starts off very subtle,
Yeah.
and it can be um, well, I want you all to myself. I just want, to spend so much time with you, getting to know you. And it's like, oh, that's so endearing, where he's planting these seeds of control and isolation and isolating you, right? So a lot of times, if someone is an abuser, initially they're very charming, lots of compliments, gifts, doing all the things, love bombing, right? And then when your guard is down and it's like, oh, this is such a great person,
Mhm.
it may be nitpicking about, well, why did you wear that? Well, that doesn't look good on you. Well, you shouldn't have wore that, and it may be verbal insults. And then slowly it's this, control. You shouldn't go there. Well, you shouldn't talk to that person anymore. I don't like them.
Yeah.
They're not good for you. I'm the only one that loves you. I'm the only one that really loves you and cares about you. They don't really care about you. So it can be very subtle, where there is this just control and manipulation. You talked about not being able to get out of it. Well, I'll say first and foremost, these subtle things you wouldn't necessarily notice at the beginning. Um, you're right. A lot of people think that if someone isn't putting their hands on me, then it's not necessarily abuse, but put downs and insults
Mhm.
are it's a verbal abuse, right?
Yeah.
Raising their voice, intimidation, manipulation.
Yeah.
Well, if you love, you must not love me, because if you love me, you would do this, right? Those types of things are abusive and manipulative, which is toxic.
Absolutely. And as you speak, I'm like being reminded of these things because one of the things that you said was, your family environment and just being having that voice that's raised at you, right? How
Mhm,
that transfers into another relationship. Like you're not even thinking like this is what I'm used to. So I'm thinking, okay, when I get into a relationship, this is what I need in order to feel loved or in order to feel secure.
mhm,
This is what I'm used to at home. And I think
mhm,
a lot of times I grew up with, well, not my entire family, but I grew up some with my grandmother, and
mhm,
she was very hard with her words. Like she's very harsh and very stern. And for me, like I always needed that harshness. And I was thinking, like whatever I look for outside, it equates to that type of environment. And I didn't realize that aspect. I didn't realize that aspect. And one of the things when I entered into that relationship, it was it was based off of trauma, right? So for a lot of people who know my story, I was molested at starting from 8 and then raped at 13 and all of these different.
mm,
And so when I got into that relationship, me opening up about my experiences, that basically allowed me to let my walls down, but I didn't realize it was going to be in a toxic situation. And so all of those little signs that you said, like, no, like shutting out my friends, like I kind of disappeared, shutting out from my family, I disappeared. I didn't recognize
Mhm.
any of these signs.
Mhm.
Do you think that, a form of abuse or being abused, it leads you to these type of relationships?
I I think that it silences, well, yes, because it kind of silences your voice.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've worked with victims, there's this common thread of um, feeling like they couldn't tell anybody, um, where then they start to kind of question the love relationship, especially if this, usually it happens where it's somebody that was trusted.
Mm-hmm.
It was somebody that you felt safe around, right? So as a child, we're discovering everything. We don't know. And a lot of times adults aren't talking to us about safety and, if anybody touches you inappropriately, then you let us know. I don't care what they tell you. I don't care how they try to intimidate you. You can always talk to us. Good touch, bad touch. A lot of families aren't talking about those things,
Yeah.
right? You've got a lot of families that have some type of history of some type of pedophile that's in the family, and they've kind of swept it up under the rug.
Yeah.
So you got this generational thing going on, and nobody talks about. We
Yeah.
don't talk about that. Well, we all need to be talking about it and saying this is wrong and
Yeah.
this person is wrong and stay away from our kids, right?
Yeah.
And so it's allowed, and we're not vigilant around our children. We're not vigilant in having these conversations, so kids don't know, like, oh, this person is supposed to be safe, and then they're not. And it's like, well, what does this mean? I
Yeah.
thought adults were safe. I thought, this was a family member or a family friend, and everybody likes them and everybody's talking to them and all of this, and then this happened, right?
Mhm.
There is this shame that comes along with it, because I know it didn't feel good, it didn't feel right, but I don't know what happened to me. Like, what is this? I
Yeah.
don't even know what to do with that. So
Yeah.
it's this silence. And the perpetrator is also planting these seeds. You better not tell anybody
Yeah.
because I'm going to hurt you, or they're not going to believe you. So there's this silence, and I'm not sure of myself, where a child may have been very confident, but then it steals that confidence,
Yeah.
because then I'm not sure of myself, right? So
Mhm.
then I might be timid and shy and gonna kind of keep to myself and not be as outgoing, not as playful as I used to be,
Mhm.
because I'm dealing with this.
Right. Right. Which is kind of crazy because when that does transfers, it kind of makes you miss the red flags getting into the
Mhm.
relationships. Like how does that translate? Like how do you notice red flags?
Well, and that's a good question, because if you have these, environments at home that aren't vigilant, or there's not this soft love that's affirming, that is tender, that is compassionate, of course, you're in this environment where you may not see the harshness as abusive, because it's normal. It's,
Mhm.
in your family. If you don't have family situations or environments where the love is there's a secure attachment style, where it is, you're secure, you're safe, I'm here with you, then you can kind of miss the red flags. So I love God and I love the word.
Yeah.
I love, he is love. And
Right.
there are examples of his love, and it talks about how he loves us. And there's so many examples in the Bible of, his unfailing, enduring love.
Yeah.
And I say this because if you're coming from a dysfunctional environment, what's your measuring tool
Yeah.
of what love is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if we think about God our Father, and sometimes it's even difficult to even see God as this benevolent Father that only means us well and doesn't mean to harm us, and means for us to be successful and prosperous and healthy and safe and well, when my father or my uncle or this other male took advantage of me.
Yeah.
But prayerfully, when people search the scriptures to find out, well, what does God's love look like and sound like, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not seeing that in people, then it's unhealthy. And
Yeah.
I need to be guarded and protected.
Yeah.
Not to say everybody means me harm. However, I need to be careful with myself.
Yeah.
Also, what are the words that I say to myself? What's my internal dialogue? Is it affirming? Is it compassionate? Is it loving?
Yeah.
Because then I need to start there. What do I think about myself? Am I looking at myself in the mirror and affirming myself and saying, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm caring, I'm loving, I'm compassionate? Because sometimes our own internal thoughts are toxic
Yeah.
and very verbally abusive. So if we're doing this to ourselves, we're also going to miss the red flags. We're
Yeah.
used to it, right? We're used to this harmful dialogue, this harmful putting ourselves down. So it's not as alarming when somebody else does it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm,
that's interesting that you say that. It's very interesting that you say that because, when I was going through my situation, I was very young, right?
mhm,
I think I was 14 years old when I was in that toxic relationship. And
mhm,
so I didn't really have a relationship with God. So I didn't know the signs to look for. The people that were around me, they were professed Christians, but a lot of them weren't acting like Christians. And so
mm,
through their lens at what God is supposed to look like, and it wasn't that. And so
mm,
transferring that into a relationship, I'm comparing like, well, they over here and they're saved, but they acting this way or they're allowing these things to happen. And so for me, I was going with basically what I felt like I wanted to know, or what I went by my own mindset and what my mindset told me. And I didn't have that affirming belief. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why I stayed in that relationship
mhm,
because after the abuse happened, I was very insecure.
mhm,
I felt very little of myself. And I didn't have my family and friends because I had already isolated myself from them. And so I was stuck there, right?
yeah,
And when he came, to me, that meant security. Like, I felt like he was secure. I felt like him keeping me away meant, "Oh, he loves me so much, he's keeping me away because this is how much he cares," you know?
mhm.
No matter how many people came, they're like, "No, Tam, you need to get out." Like, I pushed them away. And so, why do we stay in these relationships when I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't wanna get out. So, but why do you think that we stay in toxic relationships?
Yeah. That's a good one. So first and foremost, like I said, they're not all bad. They don't show that up front. Most, abusers. We get that soft, tender side that's kind of loving and compassionate, right? It's like I'm reeling you in, which that is what we're longing for. That is what triggers the oxytocin and those
Yeah,
feel good hormones and um, that are produced in our body and in our brain, right?
yeah,
And we love that feeling. We do. And so we're addicted. We're like addicted to that feeling, which can override. And, if we're having sex, then it's a soul tie situation. If it felt good to our body, and I haven't experienced this from anybody where he's saying that he's taking care of me, He said these nice things. He's not all bad, right? And so I am in this relationship where I want to get away and get out of, but
Yeah.
I can't. I
Yeah.
can't. It's like um oxytocin is one of those things that triggers the same centers, it's in conjunction with the same centers of the brain as that are affected when we use drugs,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We want that. We crave that. We look for that, right? And it is something that keeps us connected. In childbirth, oxytocin helps mother and baby to bond.
Right.
So if you can think about in the sexual act, we have that oxytocin um, thing going on as well that keeps you connected and bonded with this person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as easy to get away from. Also, if you have a history of some toxic, things going on in the home, you know, maybe it's not so bad. I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So you have a combination of things going on. It's the history, family history. I'm kind of used to stern, harsh talking. Um, so I can't necessarily differentiate. I
Yeah.
know people are saying that I need to get out, but there's also some benefit. Like he made me I felt seen.
Yeah.
I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt valued,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah, which is so true, which is so true. And one of the things that you mentioned was, the religious aspect, right? And I started thinking about, people who are attached to Jesus, right?
Mm.
And I remember I had, some people who I encountered and they love God, but they were in an abusive situation and they refused to leave because they're like, no, we're married, So in
Mhm.
situations like that, like what do you do when you're so tied to your religious beliefs that you will tolerate being abused?
Yeah. And I like that you use the word religious beliefs because love, that's opposite of what the characteristics of love that God talks about in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
right? So no, God doesn't want us to be abused.
Right.
God doesn't want us to stay in unhealthy situations. There are very specific things that God requires of the husband, and he's literally supposed to love us wives as Christ loved the church. And we know that Christ died. He literally gave his life
Mm-hmm.
sacrificially for the church and for the bride, right? The bride, which is the church. So if we look at that as an example of the man and wife, husband and wife situation, that is exactly what God expects.
Yeah.
And scripture also says that your prayers are even hindered if you're not treating your wife right.
Yeah.
So I would encourage those people to do a deep dive into scripture so they can see and understand, like, this is not what God intended. This
Yeah.
is not approved. God doesn't approve this.
Yeah.
God wants me to be taken care of and healthy and well and loved and cared
Mhm.
for. And so it's unfortunate that some religious institutions preach and teach that, but that's opposite of what God is about and his love for us. So, yeah.
So true, because so many women, I talk to so many women on a regular basis who are stuck in these relationships, but I'm like, why won't you leave? This man has cheated. Like he doesn't allow you to have financial freedom.
Mhm.
Like they limit you, and like I literally have people that I speak with where they are stuck to a room of their house and they think that because they're married, they're supposed to deal with that. And I love the example that you gave. Christ literally died for us. Like
Mhm.
love is about giving and about
Mhm.
sacrificing. And if you're not receiving that, that is your way out. They're like, well,
Yeah.
God doesn't like divorce. And so you'd rather just be miserable all the time, every day?
Yeah, and God doesn't like the fact that he's being abusive to you either. He hates it, right? So he's breaking his covenant, he's breaking his vow because he's not doing what God is telling him to do. So
Yeah,
if we're saying that we really believe the word of God, then you should really believe that this is not of God. Like that's demonic,
yeah,
right? Where it's a service relationship that we're serving each other in marriage and not being abusive and manipulative and controlling.
yeah,
That's not the relationship at all. And it is a relationship that we have with God.
yeah,
It is that loving relationship, and anything else just isn't God. It
yeah.
just isn't. Yeah.
Do you think that we sometimes get tied to the thought of, for example, we're like, well, he's not going to always be like that, or he's good a lot of the times, like we get stuck in the person who we think they are versus the person who they are right now. Do you think that's a lot, like that contributes to why some of them stay?
Yeah, and I think it also contributes to why some people get into relationships that are unhealthy,
Hmm.
thinking that they're going to change. It's like, no, ma'am. If you see red flags in the beginning that you just don't agree with, and that person isn't doing anything to work towards to change it, or just run, like
Yeah,
get away, get out. So, what I have seen in abusive relationships and domestic violence types of relationships, sometimes they have children and they're going, where are me and my kids going to go?
yeah,
Right? I don't financially have the means to take me and my kids and go and leave him. So, you have some of those types of situations that go, again, he's isolated you. He
hmm,
has isolated you. A lot of times they're also saying you don't have to work. I make enough money. I can take care of us. So then it's like I haven't worked. I haven't worked in a number of years. How am I going to get a job? That all of that seems overwhelming to them.
yeah,
Like how am I going to do this? And because he's isolated you, you don't have people in your ear saying, "We'll help you. This is what we're going to do. You can come here. You don't have to worry about it. We're going to support you and the kids." You don't have that support necessarily.
yeah,
A lot of time he's isolated you from people who are the voice of reason, people who are loving and kind and will support you,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it can be difficult in their mind's eye to even see how they can get away.
yeah.
Even if they wanted to, it's like, where would I go? I would probably end up in a homeless shelter.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I read somewhere, and I'm not like factual about these statistics, but
Mhm,
says that it takes about 7 times of leaving before they actually leave. Like sometimes it's going to be a process before they can actually realize that they can do it on their own, because they keep returning, because they keep running back to that security, or what
mhm,
they think is security, or what they think is safety. And you mentioned support, because I know that a lot of people, when I was in my situation, I isolated them to the point of, like they didn't even want to talk to me anymore, right? So
mhm.
from the outside, what do you think people should do to support those who are in situations, who are abusive situations?
I think just always saying that it's like an open door policy. I know
Yeah,
you don't hear me, but if one day you're saying, I'm ready, I'm here.
yeah,
Just always leaving that open door,
yeah,
right? To let them know it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you've told me no, that I'm here for you. If you want to ever get out, then I'm here. I'm just a phone call away, or a text message, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or just 911 and send me to your location and I'm there, right? But
Yeah.
it's being able to just let them know, no matter what, I don't care. You just let me know and I'm there to get you. It
Yeah.
takes a while, because if you think about it, it took a while for them to get to this mindset that this is okay,
Yeah.
especially if you're coming from an environment that you've been in since birth. You've been in like this dysfunctional family environment since birth. And now somebody is trying to tell you, adopt a different mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, just change your mind. Like, it's that easy.
Yeah.
When I've been in abusive environments my whole life, this is why you see people say, oh, I keep dating the same guy with just a different name and a different face, but it's still the same guy. Well, you've been around that same guy all your life, you know, either in your father, your brother, your uncle, people in the neighborhood. You've
Mhm.
been around that same type of guy all your life. That's what's familiar. And then if they get with somebody that's healthy, then they're calling him a simp.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see how that it's unfamiliar. It doesn't sound like what I'm used to hearing. It feels weird. It's uncomfortable
Yeah.
because it's new and it's different and it's actually healthy. You're
Yeah.
used to toxicity
Yeah. It's kind of hard to run away from.
because it's familiar. Familiar is comfortable, even if it's dysfunctional,
Yeah.
because it's what we're used to. We're afraid of the unknown,
Yeah.
right? And we don't like discomfort. When we really have to lean into the discomfort, when it's like, well, this is what all of the literature says, that this is healthy. This is what the podcasts say, that this is healthy. This is what the Bible says, this is healthy. I have to reprogram my mind that this is healthy, right? And I just have to stick with it until it becomes comfortable,
Yeah.
because initially it's not going to be comfortable.
Yeah. I love how you said keep the open door policy, because a lot of people do feel, that's why I wanted you to say it, because a lot of people do feel like, well, I'm just going to not talk to them at all because I'm getting so
Mhm.
angry that they're in that relationship that I just can't see you go through that. And I think that's not the right way to handle that, because people are dealing with their mindset. Um,
Mhm.
that's the reason why they're there, because of that
Yeah.
mindset shift. And they need that support. They need to know that you are there. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. How would someone like that who is ready to get out, like what are some of the tools that they can use to get out of those type of situations? I know you mentioned affirming, just affirming themselves constantly. But what are some tools?
So yeah, we do have to reprogram our mind. And I think when the person is like, I'm ready to get out of this, they're at that mindset, they're getting there to like, this is not good. I don't want this anymore. And that's good. That really is good, right? And so uh, listening, first and foremost, like reaching out to somebody, because it is going to be a thing that you can't get out of it by yourself,
Yeah.
right? So it's being able to reach out to your local domestic violence hotline, or those domestic violence agencies, because they provide support, they provide resources, they have their safe houses and safe havens and those types of things, so they can work with you to start strategizing a plan. It might not be like, oh, I'm ready to leave today, but
Yeah.
then they can start this conversation. They can also put you in contact with a therapist,
Yeah.
so you can start working on your mental, right?
Mhm.
That is strengthening you and building you up and repairing the things that this domestic violence relationship has torn down in you.
Yeah.
So it's being able to kind of reprogram those thoughts that, I am worthy
Hmm.
of a healthy living environment. And I need to get out of this. My kids are worthy of something better and something healthy, right?
Hmm.
And it's exposing them to the knowledge and the information
Yeah.
because I would say a lot of it is a lack of exposure. A lot of times people haven't seen healthy. They don't know what it sounds like. They don't know what it looks like. They really struggle to believe that it even exists.
Yeah.
So I love now that there's so much information out there. There's so many podcasts talking about, healthy relationships and what it looks like and what it sounds like.
Hmm.
There's so many different things on YouTube. There
Yeah.
are books and blogs and vlogs and articles that are talking about healthy relationships and how to recognize dysfunction.
Yeah.
So it's being able to engage with those mediums as well as because there's a wealth of information out there.
Yeah.
And so we have it at our fingertips on our phones,
Yeah.
which are computers, right?
Yeah.
So I would invite them to see what's out there, to start reading, to
Hmm.
start looking. Am I in an unhealthy relationship? Okay, yeah, like you said, you checked all the boxes except he wasn't physical. So being able to look at that and rehearse it and get it over and over again in your mind to say, this is not okay.
Yeah.
This is not okay. This is not okay.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a journal. It's 180 days of affirmation and gratitude. It teaches you how to reprogram your thoughts towards the positive. If you're struggling with talking nice to yourself, being kind, being compassionate, and seeing yourself the way God intended you to see yourself, then this journal is a helpful tool,
Yeah.
right? Has space where you can start to write your own affirmations and your own statements of gratitude, but they're prompts to kind of guide you through it. And it's based on scripture.
Yeah.
So when we think about a foundation of where do I get love from? What does it look like? What does it sound like? God is the ultimate example of that. If you think about the children of Israel that were escaping from Egypt,
Yeah.
and they wanted to go back. And
Yes.
they were beaten and
Yeah.
they were like treated so inhumanely.
Yeah.
But that's a prime example
Yeah.
of escaping a domestic violence situation. And you would think, oh, instantly they should just be grateful and all of that. But no, they wanted to go back. But
Yeah.
God still like delivered them. They
Yeah.
felt they were worshiping idols. He forgave them over and over and over again. He forgave them. He's
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna restore you. I love you. So
Yeah.
if that's not the ultimate
Yeah.
example of what love is, I just don't know what is.
Yeah, I love that you tied that together because that is so true. Like they were in a situation where they were being tormented by their
Yeah.
mother, and their situation was even getting even worse before they were rescued, and they still wanted to go back to that just because they felt like, well, we have food, you know.
It was security.
Security, but God was giving them manna even in there. He's like, I can give you your bread. I can give you everything it is that you need. You just got to keep going, you know? And
Yeah.
you think a lot of the reason why that happens is because people don't really understand who they are.
Yeah. I think that people don't understand who they are and what God intended.
Yeah.
We're created for success. We're created to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. We're a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, right? God says all these loving, wonderful things about us and his thoughts towards us and how he created us.
Yeah.
And if we don't have people who are planting those seeds and watering those seeds and
Yes.
helping that to grow, then we just don't have it, especially if we're coming from environments where, I've seen little babies being cursed out as if, they're like grown people. So when you're growing up in that environment and you're not told that you're precious, if you're not told that, you're smart, you're very smart, you're going to go far, you're going to do good things. If you're not told that and that you're not nurtured in that way from an early age, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to maintain this thought that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm here on purpose with a purpose. I'm not an accident.
Yeah.
And so it's identity, and also it's I want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I want to be comfortable. I don't want to experience growing pains,
Yeah.
right? It's going to take growth for me to transform my mind and think differently
Yeah.
um, when I'm loved. Because even coming out of an abusive relationship or toxic relationship, people can be guarded
Yes.
and untrusting. Like, I don't trust you. Even though I'm showing you love, I'm demonstrating love over and over and over again, like the children of Israel. It's like he's warming you by night and cooling you by day. It was a cloud that was over them, so it wasn't scorching sun on top of them. And then there was a fire by night that warmed them in the desert, and he gave them food, but they still didn't trust,
I still didn't.
and water as well. They had everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm used to dysfunction,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still like this is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
even though I'm going to a promised land.
Yeah.
I don't see it yet. So I'm going to complain instead of saying, wow, look at what I'm being provided for every single day, and
Yeah.
I choose to fix my eyes on that
Yeah.
rather than this transitional period.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned that because so many people they lose their vision in the midst of
Hmm.
their abuse. Like they had a clear understanding of what they wanted to do and be in life, and the moment they got into that abusive relationship, they started losing that mindset. And I think that's another reason why they get stuck. They
Yeah,
no longer could see it. They
yeah,
no longer could.
because it's like I'm in survival now.
Yeah.
All I can see is I just want to survive. So you're not even really thinking about the future. And then when this person is planting these negative seeds every single day,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to see your vision and what you hoped for. Starts to look dim and dismal and bleak.
Yeah.
So yeah, it
Yeah.
just yeah,
So basically, you have to, the moment that you realize you need out, you have to start putting in the work to do so.
absolutely, absolutely. And now more than ever, there's so many resources,
Yes.
right? I mean, it's like a Google search away,
Yeah.
literally a Google search away.
Yeah.
And you know, it's also because I'm thinking about in terms of, there are situations where it's like he takes your phone, then it's just, he's at work, ask the neighbor to use their phone,
Yeah.
right? If you're at that mindset, I've got to get out of here, you got to take that leap. And I can't stress how important it is, because I've seen situations where people just did not make it out alive,
Yeah.
or them or their kids. So it's important to say, I've got to get out of here. God is with me. He wants me out of here, and I'm going to go
Yeah.
and start to formulate that plan to get out and get to safety.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know we could be here all day talking about it, but what would be some of the advice that you would give to individuals wanting to get out. The show is dedicated to the younger versions, and I know this one is a little bit, in particular, but what would be the advice that you would give to someone who is in an abusive relationship?
I would say, contact your, their crisis hotlines. The one that I can remember right offhand is 988, and which is a national crisis hotline that you can call, and they could put you in contact with your local resources in your area. But don't be afraid to reach out for help and get out of it. Your life literally depends on it. Your future, your kids' future,
Yeah,
right? And it's thinking about yourself, and it's thinking about them, and really saying, I want to live. I
yeah,
want to live. I want my life to be better. I want my kids' life to be better. I don't want them to think that this is what it is. What love looks like, because it's a pattern. So
yeah,
your kids see that, and then they think that this is okay and this is what it's supposed to be, and it just continues to perpetuate that cycle.
yeah,
You can be the one that ends this toxic cycle. You deserve it. Your life is worthy of it. You're worthy of love. You're worthy of safety. Reach out, dial the number, and start to formulate that plan to get out of there.
absolutely, absolutely. How would you encourage them to get out? Like, what would be the words that you would say to them to get their mindset going to say you can get out?
I would say you're here on purpose. You're not here by accident. The fact that you're still alive and breathing and able to listen to this podcast right now, it's a sign. It's a sign that you're worthy. Your life is important, that you will use this pain as your platform. You will use it as a stepping stool to catapult you into that next level. Other people need to hear your story. Your life is valuable. You are valuable. We need you. Your other people need you. And get out, get out, get out, get out. But
Yeah,
you are important. Your life is worth it. You have a story to tell, and people need to hear it.
they do. They do need to hear it. I love that you said that. Before we end, as we wrap up, I just thought about, a few people who I absolutely know needs to hear this podcast because they have been in abusive situations for so long that
Mhm,
it's their life,
mhm.
can't run away, or they feel like they can't run away. And I definitely know that this is going to be something that is going to be helpful, even if it's just planting a seed. But CJ already said it, you can get out. There is nothing too hard for God. He can bring you out of the situation that you're in. He can definitely do it. There's absolutely nothing too hard. The same way that the Israelites came out of Egypt, they made it to the promised land, right? It took them a
They
while,
did.
their mindset. It was a
Yeah.
journey that was supposed to be 11 days and it ended up taking 40 years because of mindset. But that
Yes.
doesn't mean they still made it. They still made it. So I love that. I love that. As we wrap up, CJ, I do want to give you the opportunity to share your social media platforms where people can reach you. What's the before we even get to that, because I want people to understand that therapy is important. Let's talk about that real quick. How important is speaking to a therapist about the situation that they're in?
It's extremely important because just like we kind of unpacked today, a lot of people have these things going on and they're in dysfunction and they don't even know it's dysfunctional. So
Yeah.
speaking with a therapist, we can point like the root cause of why you are where you are, right? Where it came from. And then the therapist is able to give specific tools and resources of how to reframe your thinking. It all starts with your thinking, right?
Yes.
Because from thoughts, we have emotions, and then from emotions, we have behaviors or the inability to behave, because sometimes we get stuck and get paralyzed. But
Yeah.
a therapist is there holding your hand and saying, this is how we get out of that. These are the things. And so it's extremely important.
Absolutely. Because I do encourage therapy. I think therapy works. I think therapy matters. And it is especially important when your therapist is Christ like, okay?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because I'm gonna still steer you back to the Bible and say, this is what it says in scripture, right?
Yes,
We have to have some type of foundation that anchors us because the trends fade, trends change, but the Bible stands
yes,
and it's an anchor that will help us throughout our life. I say the Bible stands for basic instructions before leaving earth.
yeah.
Anything in there, I mean, anything that you're going through, there's a scripture for it. So people can find me on CJBoyd Christian Counseling on all social media platforms, and follow me and contact me via those. If you're looking for some consultation and trying to figure out what's kind of some next steps, email us at admin at cjboydcounseling.com.
Absolutely. And just for reiteration, because I know a lot of times people don't go to therapy because they want to keep that life private. How important is that?
Everything's kept confidential, right? So, we can't share anything with anybody for any reason unless you give like written permission. So, you want to share something with your doctor, we would have to have you sign a form before we could even release anything or speak to the doctor. And it would be very minimal information, like specifically, what is it that you want us sharing with your doctor? Also, if if records are subpoenaed for court purposes, what they will get is, it's vague. It's not going to be your whole life story. We don't even take our notes or our documentation that has a lot of detail because of that reason. We don't want your whole life story in the court, because our goal is to keep you safe. Our goal is for you to feel comfortable sharing and feel like my information isn't just all out there with the whole world to see. So yes, confidentiality is of the utmost importance.
Right, right. And I love that. I love that. So I just want to say thank you again for, joining me today. Thank you all for tuning in. I do hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you have, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. So until next time, we're going to say bye.
Bye.
Bye.